Hello, I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today we ask the question, how do we protect our children from a public health crisis? Medical professionals have raised the alarm about the risks of marijuana use by children and teens. There's an expectation that public policy should protect our children. Our guest, Sue Thaw, says that is not enough and that parents and teens need to wake up and realize the severity of the threat. Her extensive background in public policy spans the Carter, Reagan, and Bush administrations, and she is a highly respected expert on substance abuse prevention, treatment, and demand reduction. Sue, welcome to the show. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, hi. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, my background is in public policy. I worked for 3 administrations at the Office of Management and Budget, and but my real passion is youth prevention, is making sure that youth have the tools that they need to make safe, healthy choices, that they live in communities that are organized to make sure that they are empowered by the adults and the policies, practices, procedures, and laws that are needed to help them make these healthy choices. And as far as I'm concerned, substance use is it's a bad road to go down. And I've spent the past 30 years working to try to help parents, youth, and basically through community empowerment and making community change happen to protect youth from making decisions that could really impact the rest of their lives negatively.
Now, we've chatted a bit before the show, and is it fair for our audience to assume that what we see in terms of marijuana use coupled with youth alcohol use has really gone to epidemic proportions and has much higher risk than most people perceive?
Well, let me say, most kids actually don't use, which is really a great thing. The problem, especially with marijuana, is that for the adolescent brain, it's extremely addictive. And it also has very negative impacts on the developing brain. Most people don't realize that the brain isn't fully developed until people are about 25, 26 years old. I didn't know that until I got into this field. And mixing marijuana and the adolescent brain leads to poor cognition, especially if kids use often. And this high potency marijuana that we're seeing now literally can be as high as 99% pure THC. It's not anything like the marijuana that parents of teens right now themselves experienced, which was about 4 to 5% THC. The smoked marijuana can be as high as 35% THC, but the edibles, the dabbing, the wax, the shatter, all of those things are such high potency THC that they're causing a lot of mental health problems in the kids that are using. It's really tragic, actually.
So is it, one of the questions we have to ask ourselves, because there's so much misinformation and a lot of it's propagated by almost predatory marketing practices. Mm-hmm. Yet that misinformation has really become the opinion of a lot of people. I mean, they've adopted it as their own without challenging its authenticity or its truth. What do you have to say about that?
Well, just like, the alcohol and tobacco industries for a long time. Well, look at what people thought about tobacco in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. It was a plant. It had to be safe. It came from the ground. Doctors used it. Doctors recommended it. Nobody ever died of an overdose. It's very, very familiar to what we're hearing now about marijuana. And so the perception of harm about marijuana has gone way down across the board, not just with youth, but with everybody, especially now with the marijuana is medicine, which is another thing. If you remember the tobacco ads, marijuana, soothes your throat. No one said anything about it causing cancer. It was supposed to actually somehow be medicinal. So we're hearing the same things about marijuana being this miracle drug. And I know from my own grandmother, anything that's sounds too good to be true usually isn't true. So that's the case here as well. If marijuana has any medical value whatsoever, it's in the components, the cannabinoids of the plant. It's certainly not smoked THC. That's just ridiculous. We don't smoke any other drug to get a medical effect.
Those are great points. And we're going to take a short break now. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Sue Thaw. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzz and overshared again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
That's a smart idea.
So yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening. Our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking with public policy expert Sue Thaw about the dangers of youth marijuana use and changes essential to protect us from a public health crisis. Now, Sue, we're sort of in a conundrum. Public policy can't really change before the problem is evident. But that doesn't help a parent or a child dealing with issues now. Can you define sort of what the relationship with public policy and what a parent's role is and what parents need to do to deal with this risk?
Absolutely. Well, this is a case in which public policy is causing the problem. The legalization of marijuana, both through ballot initiatives and through legislative action in a number of states, has led to the massive proliferation of marijuana everywhere. And as we know, when it comes to public policy for any substance use, it has to do with the product, which now is much more potent. It's not the same product. I just want to give you a little bit of analogy. Today's marijuana is the equivalent of 3-2 beer as opposed to 180 proof alcohol. And there's no potency caps on anything. There's no packaging requirements. There's no labeling. They're claiming this is a medicine, and yet nobody knows what the drug interactions are with actual pharmaceuticals people are taking. So policymakers are running ahead, not taking the science into consideration. Most of them are older people who remember using maybe marijuana in their college days and have no idea what's going on. So rather than protecting parents and youth, they're opening up marijuana stores that are advertising, like across from my grandson, who's 13 years old, his middle school is a big marijuana dispensary in Maryland. And he had said to me, Grammy, I think that that's ridiculous. I have to drive by there in the school bus to school and home from school. And what message is that sending to me? So my message to parents is, in this case, this is not a rite of passage. You really need to talk to your kids honestly about why they should not be using marijuana. And for any parent who thinks that parental guidance and attitudes and parents being honest with their kids about what they think is appropriate, setting limits and, having really reasonable conversations, they're wrong. In fact, the science shows that parents are incredibly important influencers. And I think parents need to be educated about the dangers of mixing marijuana and the adolescent brain. And I don't think we've done a very good job as a society at all of getting parents, schools, youth, and we have all this misinformation. You said that in the last segment. You're 100% right. On the internet, on TV, in movies, and we're doing almost nothing and spending almost no federal or state dollars at disabusing people of the misinformation that they're receiving from people who really have an agenda to make money selling marijuana to everybody, not just kids.
And as you pointed out, most kids do not use marijuana. And we probably don't have most kids advocating to peers that do to not use, because they generally become separate groups of people. They don't cohabitate their ecosystem socially. But the problem is it getting to the point where the number that are using could escalate to be a public health crisis, so that when these kids grow older, it's going to have a severe impact on their ability to live healthy, happy lives?
Well, that, and I will say, there's been all of this controversy about, is marijuana a gateway drug? Meaning, if you use marijuana, are you, very likely to move on to use other substances? And I'm not going to even say harder substances, because high potency marijuana is a dangerous substance at this point. The issue is, most people who start to use don't necessarily move on to other drugs, but nobody starts with heroin or meth or fentanyl. That is just not how people initiate into substance use. People initiate as youngsters with alcohol, vaping marijuana, and or nicotine. And from there, they prime their brains and they move on to other things. So I would posit that part of why we have this fentanyl overdose problem is because we don't do a good job stopping kids from using in the first place. And the other thing I'd love to tell you is marijuana is definitely addictive. About 33% of the people who start will end up with a cannabis use disorder. So anybody who thinks that marijuana is not addictive does not understand the science.
That's amazing stuff. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Sue Thaw. Stay tuned. This is important information.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At MediaCom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power, and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared, and you can be certain we'll keep your world connected.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What? I can't drive. Why? My. Oh.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening, our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and we're with Sue Thaw, and we're talking about the need for parents and families to take responsibility to learn the truth about marijuana. Sue, you're on a roll. Let's keep it going.
Okay, well, I just wanted to come back to something I started speaking about before the break, which is, kids who start using alcohol, obviously we have 21 as the drinking age for a reason. Alcohol is definitely not good to mix with the adolescent brain. But the problem with marijuana is that the kids who start using end up being daily users. They can really get in trouble with marijuana. With alcohol, the issue is more binge drinking. It's not that most of the kids who use every day. They really don't. It's a tiny percentage. But if the kids that start using marijuana, a pretty high percentage of them, like 6 to 8%, not only use daily, but use multiple times daily. And that's addiction. When you can't start using, when you start having consequences for your use, and when you're using these really high potency marijuana products, unfortunately, you can not only end up, losing your motivation, memory, it can affect your learning, but you can end up with massive mental health issues. And unfortunately, a lot of parents who I've spoken to have kids who have ended up having psychotic-like episodes and ending up in the emergency room from their marijuana use. So this is not reefer madness. This is not some I'm a crazy person making this up. We have emergency room data to show that, in fact, marijuana is a main reason kids are showing up with massive mental health problems in emergency rooms around the country. Not just kids, though, adults and elderly people too.
Well, kids too, when you see that there's edibles, that they're drinkables, that vaping, that, we think a lot of kids are just vaping, but the majority of young kids that are vaping marijuana products. If we see all these threats emerging with low literal age limit, shouldn't parents be extremely irate that this is the kind of landscape out there for their kids growing up?
Parents should be irate, and I want to give you another example. Vaping nicotine is horrible. The flavors in nicotine, who would have cotton candy or strawberry crush, or no adult would pick that. But the issue is that the nicotine in these vaping pods are the equivalent of 10 packs of cigarettes. And so I have a very close friend she got her kid through high school without having, vaped or used marijuana. He goes to college, and the next thing, he's hooked on nicotine, and hooked to the point that he comes home and he doesn't want his mother to know, and he's out of sorts and he's going nuts. And why? Because he's basically detoxing from nicotine. So we can't forget that smoking's horrible, but vaping is really, it's almost worse because of the high levels of nicotine in these vaping products. It's incredibly addictive, and kids get hooked quickly.
And we see that it's the same delivery system for marijuana products. So for them, it's just switching a pod. So you have that sort of behavioral habit. You're the same actions are involved.
Exactly. Yep.
And I think we know nicotine is one of the most difficult drugs to recover from, to stop using.
Yes,
It's highly, highly addictive. Is it also, we also know that marijuana is very addictive, especially to young children. Is that been really, is it just been profits? Is it as really basic and ugly as just profits have driven these companies to market these products to kids?
I think it's also society as a whole where, everything goes, marijuana is not a big deal. And honestly, it's just not the same drug, as I said before. And my problem with decision makers is that they're our age, your age and my age. They're not in their 30s, 20s. They're not in the drug scene. So they're making decisions, not understanding the impacts of the decisions that they're making. And I want to say one other thing. I'm not African American. I'm not a Black or brown person. So I don't want to totally get into sort of the social equity stuff here. But interestingly, when Illinois was considering legalizing marijuana, one of our youth, who's now very well known, Victor Shai, got the head of the NAACP in Illinois to come out against marijuana legalization, because her point is, just like alcohol outlets and where they sell it, they're going to end up in minority communities with most of these dispensaries, and their kids are going to be the least likely to be able to recover or fail a drug test and not be able to get a job. So interestingly, you can argue on the other side of this that this is really, it's a regressive thing, and it hurts people who would be least likely to be able to deal with the bad effects, the addiction, the school issues, and minority communities really should, I think, look very carefully at how this is going to be affecting and is already affecting their communities.
That's an amazing story. We know that there are targets in our communities that are very soft and very innocently susceptible to these things, and we need to work together to stop that problem. Now, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to ask Sue to share some comments, insights, and inspiration for you all to share. See you after the break.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening, our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
This is the internet that keeps the TV streaming, the meetings zooming, the playlist flowing, and the doorbell showing
Anybody home?
who's coming and going. This is the internet that powers the workout, that does the homework, that makes the lights work, that makes for light work, and makes
Don't forget to pick up Charlie.
your life work. This is the internet that keeps it all connected and has hundreds of people who ensure it's protected.
Nice try, hackers.
This is the internet voted best because it's extreme, nothing less.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At MediaCom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared. And you can be certain we'll keep your world connected.
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we're talking about protecting our children from the risks of marijuana in the face of media misinformation, unscrupulous marketers. Let's see what insights and inspiration our guest, Sue Thaw, has to share. Sue, in being politically correct, everybody's starting to talk about substance use disorder, addiction as a disease. But there is a huge component of choice that comes before the disease is even in play. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Now, obviously, there's a genetic component to addiction. Some people, it runs in their families, have more of a chance of, ending up with a substance use disorder than others, but there's no test for that to be able to tell. But this is one of the few diseases where initially there is a choice whether to use or not to use. And some people, once they start using, their brains light up and they really keep going. But at some point, this becomes a brain disease. Switch flips in your brain and it's no longer a choice. Basically, using the drug takes over your life. That's what addiction is. You keep using even though you have negative consequences with your family, your job, school, your friends. You seek the drug more than you seek social interaction or doing well at school or in your job or anything else. And that's a substance use disorder. And as I said previously, there's definitely something called cannabis use disorder, which is addiction to marijuana, to THC. It is treatable, but it's real. And we can't just gloss over that. And parents have a gigantic opportunity and role to basically talk to their kids, as we said before. And I want to say too, addiction is a developmental brain disease. The earlier you start and the more often you use, the more likely you are to have a lifetime substance use disorder. And unfortunately, substance use disorders are chronic relapsing conditions. So a lot of people who go through treatment need to go through treatment multiple times to get it to stick. So if you can prevent a chronic relapsing condition in your child, wouldn't you want to do everything that you possibly could? So the great news is, as I said before, parents have great influencers on their children, more than they think. And so talking to your kids about what you expect from them in a really respectful way, and having an open dialogue and communication about what their peers are doing. If there's any pressure on them, practicing with them peer refusal skills, and letting them know that you would be disappointed if they did make a choice like that. But if they did, they need to come to you if they start having a problem, so that you can have an intervention and get them referred to the help that they might need. But I just want to say, parents are incredibly important. We need to really make sure that teachers, coaches, the faith community, everybody that comes into contact with kids is prepared to have these important discussions with them, and to be a protective factor, so that in fact if they do make this decision, the more you can put off when you make it, the more likely you are to not have a lifelong problem. And if you can wait until you're 21, that's great. But as I said, waiting until you're 25 is probably better. But as a society, we tend to glamorize substance use, and that's something we really need to work on, I think, all of us. It's dangerous, and it's not glamorous once you end up having a substance use disorder take over your life.
It's fascinating because, there's this accusation of, reefer madness. But the fact is that what we've learned, and your years of experience also add to it, is that there's real science backing up what we're saying. And if there's an element of reefer madness anywhere, it's the people with the misinformation trying to push marijuana on people. They like to say that they're innocent, but they're not. The science and the medicine all goes against what they're saying. And, and even drug interactions, even CBD, if you're elderly, taking any of these things can have a severe interaction with life-saving drugs that your doctor is prescribing you. So it's important to be careful. And if it's that sensitive for elderly, the youth have got to be that impacted. We've got a few seconds left here. What's a final comment you'll leave our audience with?
My final comment is, get involved in changing policies. That if you have a chance to make sure that there's a potency limit on THC, if you're in a state that has already legalized, get involved in fighting legalization if you're in a state like Iowa where you haven't legalized yet. It's not a good thing. And that would be my wrap up. Get involved.
Well, thank you so very much, Sue Thao. And thank you all for watching us today. Check out our website at healthyiowa.org and keep your eye on MediaCom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. On MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.